But here's a picture of what passive communication can look like. It's often about really indirect communication. And I want to tell you, when I was first starting to develop assertive communication workshops for ETFL, it was a fraught process for me because I realized that I'm kind of thinking about communication with two different cultural lenses. So when we look at what is privileged and valued in sort of dominant Canadian culture, that may be different than what's privileged and valued in some of your home cultures. I certainly know with Chinese culture there's a really big juxtaposition, and I just want to leave a lot of room for the fact that we may have aspects within our cultures that, for instance, indirect communication is something that's really valued in Chinese culture because it's about helping someone maintain a presenting face. But it can also be very frustrating when you're communicating cross-culturally because people, get a lot out of direct communication here. So indirect communication can be sort of, it can be from something like, what time would you like to meet to talk about stuff today? Which to me would be very simplified, a very Chinese way of asking it. If I don't really care, I just want to know what the other person wants. But I've had the feedback from my coworkers over time that sometimes they just want to know what time I want to meet. And we can start from there, and that just makes it a little bit more efficient in the conversation. But it can also look in other indirect ways. It can be about crying, yawning, sighing, and muttering. And of course, these are natural things that we do in communication anyway. It doesn't necessarily mean it's passive. Often passive communication is very verbose and rambly. It's kind of like, what does the person want? What are they talking about? What are they saying? And so this really relies on other people to sense you. The focus is generally on the other person's needs. And there can be disclaimers in passive communication that sort of cut down your credibility as a speaker. And these are actually ways that we're taught to communicate as women. Right? So there are things like saying, I'm no expert, but I think maybe we should park here, right? Do you need to be an expert to figure that out? No. But these are the disclaimers we're used to putting out there. Same thing with just. When we say, oh, I just want to check in with you, it's kind of apologizing or making your thing really little. When we say actually, it kind of gives the impression that we're surprised about something, which may not necessarily be what we want to be communicating either. The energy of passive communication is all folded in around the heart. So that slouching posture is a big part of it. If you find that you are challenged by passive communication, i.e. you veer towards passive communication when you're feeling stuck, one thing is just to simply check your posture. How am I actually sitting right now? And what happens if I stand up and I just bring my shoulders back a little bit, allow my solar plexus to meet the world, and that to offer a shelf for my heart, right? And do things feel different from there? Passive communication can give a lot of mixed messages. And also, it can just be really hard to express our opinions and needs over time if this is our pattern of communication, because part of it involves a necessary burying of those wants and needs or disconnection from them in order to maintain a more passive stance. So there are some advantages to this style. You don't really have to take responsibility for decisions. You're at less risk then for not taking a position. In many collectivist cultures, this is actually seen as a respectful way to be, and it's actually seen as, a form of leadership even. And really, we're looking at it as a survival strategy. So a really big piece for me is always to think about what are our go-to patterns and how are they simply imprinted, right? So at some point, people that veer towards passive communication, generally before age 12, experienced an acute situation or a series of incidences where they learned that being passive could help save you. And this might be anything from schoolyard bullying to witnessing dynamics between parents or caregivers to just other messages and other social learnings based on interactions with others. So again, because it's a survival strategy, it's all the more reason to, when we find ourselves being stuck in that passiveness, to really understand, oh, could there be an inner child part of me that is trying to drive the plane, and thinking that if we're passive in this situation, it will help us, right? Maybe that part needs to be thanked for sending our larger system some information like a smoke signal. And say, maybe that part needs to be validated to say, you know what, being passive, it helped us grow up. Thank you, you did that, that's great. But you know, I'm gonna deal with this now because I'm me in our adult age now. And we can figure this out with the other parts of ourselves. So lots of times it's just continuing to have conversations with the different parts of ourselves and recruiting whatever more mature, more wise, more experienced parts can to help in the situation. But to also soothe that part of us that's in distress and wanting to stay small. So some of the disadvantages are generally a sense of disempowerment, and over time this really chips away at our self-esteem and our sense of entitlement to be able to ask for what we want or need. Ultimately, I think the worst part of this is we just have to live with the decisions of others.